Welcome to the Clinical File. I'm John Cordray, and I'm a licensed professional counselor, and this is my mental health analysis of the college football player Daniel Mincey case. I will be focusing on the main mental health and psychological indicators while providing the backstory. I don't just talk about the crimes, I talk about the psychology behind the crimes and the mysteries that captivate us. I look beyond the facts of the case to understand the why of the crime. My analysis is based on my speculations. It's not a diagnosis of anyone involved in this case. What happens when the pressure builds in a young athlete far from home and a small conflict turns into something no one saw coming? How can a moment of rage override everything a person has worked for their entire life? In cases like this, we often see how unmanaged stress or unresolved emotions can lead to impulsive actions that change lives forever. These questions matter because they help us understand the human side of a sudden violence. Stay with me as I look at the behavioral clues that might point to deeper struggles and why this incident raises important points about mental health support in high-stress environments like college sports. You'll see how small tensions can build and what that tells us about the need for better ways to handle conflict. On November 22, 2025, at the University of Alabama at Birmingham Football Operations Center, something went wrong just hours before a home game. Daniel Mincey, a 20-year-old freshman offensive lineman who had transferred from the University of Kentucky earlier that year, was involved in an incident that left two teammates injured. Dajir Peterson and Joshua Underwood were both defensive linemen. They were stabbed and taken to the hospital. They were in stable condition and later released. Mincey was arrested that day by campus police and charged with attempted murder in the attack on Peterson and first-degree assault in the attack on Underwood. The psychological question here is, how does a prior altercation signal potential for escalation? Reports from one of the victims indicate that the day before the stabbing, Mincey and Peterson had a brief fight during practice. That kind of on-field tension is not rare in football, where physical contact is a part of the game. But when it carries over, it can become a warning sign of poor impulse control or building resentment. In my experience as a counselor, unresolved conflicts like this can fester, especially under the intense pressure of competitive sports. Young college athletes face constant physical and emotional demands, and without healthy outlets, minor issues can grow. Mincey grew up in Florida, raised by his grandmother. He had a successful high school career at Cardinal Gibbons High School, contributing to a state championship team and earning attention from college programs. Football was his path forward, leading him first to Kentucky and then to UAB. The second psychological question is, what role does isolation play when a young person moves far from support systems? Mincey transferred to UAB in May 2025, leaving behind familiar surroundings for a new team and a new city. At 20 years old, adapting to a new program while managing the demands of college athletes can feel overwhelming. Many young athletes experience homesickness or difficulty building new relationships. Being away from family, in this case, his grandmother, who raised him, might limit access to everyday emotional support. That isolation can make stress harder to manage, leading to bottled-up feelings. The incident happened in a team facility, reportedly during a time when players were together for breakfast or pregame routines. Details show the stabbing occurred around 10 a.m., just before the Blazers were set to play South Florida. The team still took the field that day, voting to play in honor of the seniors. The third psychological question is, why bring a weapon into a team environment? Court records confirm Mincey used a knife in the attack. Carrying a knife to a team facility suggests a level of preparedness for confrontation that goes beyond a spontaneous argument. This points to possible paranoid thinking or a heightened sense of threat. In psychological terms, it can reflect poor judgment under stress or an exaggerated response to perceived danger. For a young man in a hyper-competitive setting, Feeling threatened, even if not realistically, can trigger a fight or flight reactions that could go too far. Mincey had no reported prior criminal record or disciplinary issues noted in public accounts. He was described by his attorney as having no history that would predict this. Yet the severity of the response raises questions about underlying anger management challenges. The fourth psychological question: how does sudden violence connect to impulse control struggles? The attack was described as plunging a knife with intent to cause serious harm. This level of force in response to what started as a teammate dispute suggests difficulty regulating emotions in the moment. Impulsive aggression often links to moments where rational thinking shuts down. In high-pressure worlds like college football, where adrenaline runs high, learning to pause and de-escalate is key. Without those skills, a heated exchange can turn dangerous fast. After the incident, Mincey was held on a $90,000 bond and later released. His attorneys requested that he be allowed to return to Florida to live with his grandmother while awaiting court proceedings. The judge granted this in December 2025 over prosecutor objections about flight risk. Mincey was no longer a student or a team member at UAB. What does seeking youthful offender status tell us about accountability and growth? In December 2025, court filings showed Mincey intended to apply for youthful offender status and plead guilty. This approach in Alabama allows young adults to have records sealed and often receive reduced consequences, focusing on rehabilitation over punishment. It reflects recognition that at 20, the brain is still developing, particularly areas tied to decision-making and impulse control. The frontal lobe, responsible for planning and restraining actions, does not fully mature until the mid-20s. This biological factor plays a role in many cases involving young adults in regrettable choices. The victims, Peterson and Underwood, recovered physically. Underwood later spoke publicly, saying the incident shocked everyone and describing how things took a turn quickly. He noted the prior practice scuffle, but emphasized the unexpected escalation. How does team dynamics contribute to psychological strain? Football teams build strong bonds, but they also create hierarchies of rivalries. Offensive linemen like Mincey faced off against defensive linemen like Peterson and Underwood at every practice. That daily competition can breed friction if not managed well. Group pressure to appear tough might discourage seeking help for stress or anger. Many athletes hesitate to show vulnerability, fearing it weakens their position on the team. This type of culture can leave emotional issues unaddressed until they erupt. Mincey's transfer from Kentucky to UAB added another layer. Adjusting to new coaches, schemes, and teammates bring its own challenges. Some players thrive on change, others struggle with the uncertainty. Why do some individuals escalate conflicts to extreme levels? In this case, the use of a deadly weapon in a teammate dispute points to a disconnect between perceived threat and response. Possible factors include accumulated stress from performance expectations, personal adjustments, or even unaddressed anxiety. When someone feels cornered emotionally, their mind shifts to survival mode. Rational options fade, and extreme actions feel justified in the moment. Understanding this helps highlight the importance of mental health resources in sports programs. Colleges now offer more counseling, but stigma remains a barrier. What is the psychological impact on everyone involved, including the perpetrator? The victims face physical recovery and likely emotional trauma from the betrayal by a teammate. Underwood mentioned the shock to the sense of brotherhood. For Mincey, facing serious charges at a young age brings its own crisis. Seeking youthful offender treatment suggests a path forward, taking responsibility while allowing for personal growth. Cases like this often involve regret once the adrenaline fades. The why here seems to be tied to a perfect storm of youth, pressure, isolation, and a poor coping in a critical moment. No public details points to long-term mental health diagnosis or childhood trauma for Mincey. What stands out is a sudden break from an otherwise clean record. This reminds us that mental health struggles can appear without obvious prior signs, especially under new stresses. College athletes deal with unique demands, academics, training, social expectations, and future uncertainty. Programs that teach emotional regulations and conflict resolution can prevent escalations. Early intervention for signs of stress might change outcomes. This case brings those needs into stark focus. The legal process continues with the hearing scheduled for early 2026 on the youthful offender application. Both victims have moved forward in recovery. The team provided counseling options for players affected. Stories like this push conversations about support systems in sports. They show how quickly life can shift when emotions override judgment. By examining these indicators, we gain insight into prevention. Strong support networks, open communication, and skill building for stress management make a difference. Young people navigating high-stakes environments deserve those tools. This is a really tragic case on a lot of levels, but I'm very thankful that nobody was killed. And this certainly seems like an impulsive decision out of rage, a lot of anger. There's a lot of stress involved. And I think if Mincey would have been able to get the services that he obviously needed to help manage his anger, this incident probably would not have happened. These two other young men, the victims, were hurt, but I'm very thankful that they weren't more seriously hurt. And they're hopefully getting help that they need, and whoever witnessed that attack will get help as well. For Mincey, I hope that his future is still bright, that he can learn from this, that he can rehabilitate and get some anger management. We don't know what's going to happen with his future as far as the legal system. That remains to be seen. So this is one of those cases that is tragic for everyone involved. It does not appear that Mincey struggled with any, at least reported, mental health issues. And it's just a tragic case of rage and frustration and stress and anxiety and all of the stuff boiled up into a perfect storm. So what did you think about this case? Were there any elements that stood out to you? If you want more mental health analysis of true crime stories like this one, be sure to subscribe for more. And if you found this case compelling, be sure to watch this next story. It will make you more aware of your surroundings. Thank you for joining me today. Until next time, stay curious, stay safe.